Welcome to the show. I'm Mark Crutcher, and I'm joined, of course, as always, by my trusty sidekick, Renee Hobbs. Hello, Renee. And, of course, as usual, we locked the doors, but
I found a way back in.
She got in anyway. Destiny Herndon de la Rosa. Listen, since last month, several things have happened. One is we had our first Intel operations training.
Yes, and it went really well.
It went real well. Went real good. People were really excited about it. And surprisingly, we had two people actually starting to implement the stuff before they left here.
Yes, they hung out in the break room for a while. Yep.
It started implementing stuff, and it was really interesting to see how excited people were.
Yeah, people interacted. They asked good questions, and it was a new twist on what the sidewalk counselors need to be doing.
Well, it's not just sidewalk counselors.
Right.
It's anyway that they're going to be one of the big players in this deal, the sidewalk counselors.
Right.
But there's going to be other people involved in it too. But,
yes.
And of course, we're sorry that you weren't able to make it. Things came up in your life, and you didn't get to go.
I'm a terrible spy.
Yeah.
Or maybe I was here and you just don't know.
Yeah, maybe we didn't see you. But anyway,
I'm such a good spy.
We're sold out again for March, as we've posted, and you're getting filled up for April.
I am.
And we're getting people further out.
Right.
So if people want to go, they need to get a hold of you.
They need to contact me for sure. Email,
'Cause
phone.
You're the gargoyle. If they
Yes,
don't
I
get
am.
past you, they don't go.
That's right. That's all there is to it.
And we've already had some pro-aborts try to go.
Yes.
And we've already had some people from the godless leftist media try to go.
Yep.
And it's funny to go online and see how the abortion lobby is just melting down over this. And you think, well, why would they be so concerned about it? If they're not doing anything, we're not going to find out anything. And it's really strange that they keep on saying they're not going to find anything, but we hate them for doing this. Mm-hmm. It looks like you'd love us using up our resources and our time and something that's not going to produce any results.
Yeah,
but
they're saying some pretty nasty things.
Yes, they are, and you can tell they're very, very concerned about it. Another thing that happened since our last show was that we lost Justice Scalia. Of course, he was the strongest person on the court in favor of the protection of the unborn child. So how that's going to play out, who knows?
Yeah, Obama's already digging in.
Yep. We've never had a whole lot of faith in the Republicans because they've stabbed us in the back so many times in the past. As I often say, we've been stabbed in the back more often by Republicans than we've been stabbed in the chest by Democrats. Mm-hmm. But we're going to find out who's got the cojones and who doesn't over this deal right here.
Right.
And we're also going to find out something about whoever the next president's going to be when he looks to or she looks to fill this position. And I want to talk about that a little bit more later in the show. We're seeing not only are the pro-aborts going berserk over the Intel operations training, but more and more of these people are coming out and just openly saying that the pro-lifers are winning. And you're seeing all these articles now online, and a lot of them in mainstream media, where they're lamenting the fact that the country's changing and the young people are flocking to the pro-life side. And now you're seeing all these articles come out talk about something that we talk about here on Life Talk all the time and have been for years, and that's the closing of the abortion clinics.
Right. Record numbers.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's their argument, that they're closing now in numbers that they've never seen in the past.
Right.
And, we've always brought this up, and I've made the point here many times that when I started Life Dynamics, there were 2,126 freestanding abortion clinics in the United States. Now there's like 550 or something.
Yeah, 553.
Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they're plummeting, and these people are in a full panic over this.
Right.
As well they should be.
It's all over the news, the closings and how we're winning. And I know that the other side is just going to become even more and more angry and vicious.
Yep. I've been saying for years, you can go back and read the earliest Life Talks from 98, 99 when we first started out. Mm-hmm. And I said then, the closer we get to winning, the more vicious these people will become.
Yeah.
And we're seeing evidence of it everywhere.
Right.
And they even had apparently some people watching our building during this Intel operation training.
Right.
And so
I
anyway.
think that the point needs to be made with all the clinics closing down. They're not closing down because they were these top quality, high-notch clinics.
Right.
They were closing down because they didn't meet basic standards for a surgical center. And on top of that, Planned Parenthood believes that their money should go towards lobbying and commercials and giant pink buses versus putting them into making abortion more accessible, if that's what they really care about, like make these centers fit these standards, because the standards aren't outlandish. It's
No.
wider hallways, it's better ventilation systems, and they
Right.
want to say that these are superfluous standards that they have, but when you actually look into why they have it, so many women have gotten perforated uteruses or had issues when they were in the clinic where EMTs have tried to get in and they can't get the gurney through the hallways because it's too small. So now you take a woman who's bleeding internally and you're having to carry her outside to an ambulance. You know, the medical community and the EMTs have seen time and again that we need these regulations to be changed. We've seen that there's bacteria being spread because the ventilation in these rooms is wrong. They're really common sense things. I think everybody wants to say that they were these outlandish changes we were asking for, but they weren't. We were asking that they be up to the same standards as a veterinary clinic.
Well, I was
The
going to make
fact
the
that that
point.
many of them closed.
I was going to make the
shows that they
point. If the whatever the standards are that the abortion industry wants for their abortion clinics, you could not open up a vet clinic with those standards.
Yeah, and they're saying that they're not going to save these women. That is a joke. That's what it's going to do.
Right, that's what it's designed to do. And
right.
you apply it to every other medical facility. Imagine that you went into a hospital and they had a 2.5 foot wide hallway. I mean, you'd
Yeah.
be appalled at that.
Right.
Or any other, if you went to your OBGYN and they had a hallway they couldn't get a gurney in.
And that's why they're talking about these are like trap laws or whatever, that we're putting these undue restrictions on doctors, that we're asking that they also be connected with the hospital so that when you do perforate a woman's uterus or, you know, leave part of a fetus inside of her and she gets this infection and horrible things happen, that you can continue care. But the thing that we have to realize about abortionists is they don't do continued care. They're not
No.
a regular doctor who cares about the whole woman. They do abortion. That's pretty
Right.
much all they do. So by asking them to have these hospital admitting privileges, you are now exposing the fact that they are not true
Well,
doctors.
Renee and I have talked to these girls call in here. You and I have talked to them that have told us that they were specifically told, if you're injured, don't call us. Go to your emergency room or call your physician. Do
Go to
not
a qualified physician.
go to somebody that can that's actually good advice, because we've told these girls many times, they'll call us and say, you know, I'm passing clots or I'm doing this or I'm doing that. And we always tell them, go to the emergency room, but don't go back to the people that did
No,
this.
don't
You know,
even call them.
These people are quacks.
Right.
And by its nature, abortion is always only going to be able to attract those people. That's what you get
Right.
when you do abortion. And they're panicking. We're also seeing them do some things that are just utterly outrageous, and particularly in states like California. California now has passed a law requiring pro-life crisis pregnancy centers to advertise where you can go get an abortion.
Right.
You wouldn't do that with any other business in the
Right.
world.
They're saying it's free speech, but it's
It's
so
compelled
wrong.
speech. Well,
in
that
so many ways.
yeah, this San Diego judge, John Houston, obviously a raging pro-abort, when he was asked about the free speech aspects of this, about compelling the pro-life centers to say things that they don't want to say, he said it doesn't prevent them from saying anything. But does this man not understand the Constitution and understand that free speech not only the First Amendment can not only not compel you to remain silent if you want to speak out, but it also can't compel you to say things that you don't believe
Right.
or that you don't want to say.
Right.
But he only looks at one half of it,
Yeah, of course.
naturally.
Right.
Well, and if
And-
the pro-choice side feels this passionate about it, you know what? Why don't they do what we've done as sidewalk counselors? Are you that passionate and dedicated that you would stand outside with a big sign that says "Need an abortion" with a number on it, so that you can get spit at and cussed at and have buffer zones and everything else applied to you? No, they want to be able to have a foot actually inside our pregnancy resource centers when we've never been given anything close to that with
Right.
abortion clinics.
Imagine that you said we want a state law passed that allows pro-lifers to sit in the waiting room.
Right, and offer
Right.
our alternative
Right.
resources.
Listen to what this guy says, this judge, if you want to call him a judge. Quote, the act permits discussion about treatment and expressing opinions, including their message regarding abortion. Permits. No, it doesn't. It requires. It says these pro-life centers are exposed to these heavy fines and civil actions against them by the state. It doesn't permit it.
Right.
It requires it.
Right.
It's these people's use of language is unbelievable. Also, you have a thing in California going on where they're requiring even churches to offer health care plans that pay for abortion. And some of these people are rebelling against this stuff. But I tell you what the pro-aborts have figured out, and that is they always talk about choice. They can't win if choice is the issue. They see that they're losing because of choice. And we're talking about these abortion clinics closing, and one reason they do is because they can't staff them. People in the medical community, particularly physicians, are saying, I'm choosing not to be involved.
Right.
And so they can't get abortionists, and the place is closed down.
Right.
Back to us having to talk about their resources when it comes to abortion clinics. Is there anything we could do as far as the fact that abortion clinics actually make money off of a woman choosing abortion, whereas pregnancy centers don't make any money when a woman chooses life? If anything, it costs them
money
because they have to do this. So would it not be the same as like advertising? Basically, it's paid advertising, right, or something that
That's
we
exactly
would
what
have
it
to be
is.
doing for a clinic. Whereas even if they were to reciprocate and tell where to get resources, it's a completely different thing because this is actual free services and charity versus them being
For-profit.
a for-profit business.
Right. I know. Pro-aborts are now starting to complain about, they're wanting people to have sympathy for them. It's amazing. Now they're coming out with all these articles, and there was one in Bloomberg, who's, of course, that's a raging pro-abortion site, about abortion clinic operators talking about how hard it is to be in the abortion business. They're like, even though this is very difficult work and we don't make any money and we're threatened and we're doing all this, we do it because we love women so much. This is the biggest crock.
They want to be known as just a medical facility like any other medical facility.
That's what they're saying,
and
right. They're not a medical
they're not,
facility.
no.
And they're even talking about something that I talk about in my book, Siege, that our biggest ally has always been, and will always be, the stigma of abortion.
Right.
And and that's one thing we talk about in the Intel training, about one of the things that you gain from doing Intel is the stuff that you use then to stigmatize abortion.
And it goes back to, we want to save lives, they want to kill lives.
They want to take them, right.
So.
This pro-abort operates Southwind Women's Center, abortion mill. She says that they have trouble getting a mortgage. They can't get insurance. They can't get contractors. They can't get she said, we can't even get somebody willing to deliver Band-Aids and bottles of water to the clinic because they don't want to be associated with it. Well, that's what's known as choice. And they want to compel these people to be required to do these things, just like they require the churches to buy abortion coverage in their health insurance policy. And like the thing with the Little Sisters of the Poor, requiring them to offer. Imagine this: you've got a bunch of mostly older-aged nuns, but even if they're young, it doesn't matter. Requiring them to have contraceptive and abortion coverage in their health insurance. It's
ridiculous.
It's becoming so clear that they are pro-choice when it comes to abortion, and that's it. They are pro-abortion, but any other choice they have an issue with. The fact that they are always demonizing anybody who has a child. We saw Cosmo Magazine with their tweet about like, oh, more women are having babies, frowny face. I mean, you quickly see that the choice is only positively looked upon by these people when it's a choice to abort.
Well, we've said this for years. They have an agenda that has abortion at its head, but that's not all it's about. They hate life. They hate babies. And you now have this, I don't know who Adele is, but anyway, she's apparently a singer or something. And she came out in an article in Vogue talking about how having her baby, she said, quote, makes me very proud of myself. When I became a parent, I felt like I was truly living. I had a purpose where before I didn't. My main thing is mom, and it's me, and then it's work.
What a disgusting, vile comment.
Well,
How dare she?
She's getting raked over the coals by the godless left for saying these things. And
that's how a mom is supposed to be. That's so beautiful.
But they hate her for it.
Right.
And they've done this before. There's other people have come out and said similar things. High-profile women in entertainment have come out and talked about how much they love being a mom and how much they love their baby, and they get raked over the coals for it. Well, again, what happened to choice?
I can already see the pro-life parody of Hello from the Other Side, where we welcome Adele and we say we love that awesome comment. That's a beautiful thing that you just said.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very scary. The contrast you absolutely see. It's not even just pro-abortion. It's a hatred for motherhood, for new life. It's a disgust in a beautiful comment like that. That's insane. Nobody in their right mind would have a problem with her saying that it's empowering and awesome to be a woman and to do something inherently, cool with your body. You made a new human person. Like, no, stick to your record. Stop making people.
Right. It's unbelievable. If she'd have had an abortion and came out and talked about what a beautiful experience it is to have a dead baby rather than a live one, they'd have been all over.
Oh, yeah.
The funny thing is, like, when you read that, I don't even view it as a political statement. And Hollywood is known for standing up. You know, Leo DiCaprio just won his Golden Globe. He took the time to talk about climate change. I mean, like, they're constantly talking about political issues. She made a statement about how it was awesome to be a mom, and
It's not political.
And they found a way to be disgusted and upset about that. That's horrifying.
Amnesty International, which has been a pro-abortion organization for decades, and they try to claim they're not. I did a speech years ago, I can't even remember where it was, but in a hotel for a pro-life group, and right down the hall, there's a big hotel, and they had several conference rooms, and right down the hall was Amnesty International. And I went down there and confronted some of these people. Oh, no, we're not pro-abortion. We stay out of that. Now, which I told them they were liars. I said, you need to check out your own organization if you think that that's true. Anyway, Amnesty International has now released a statement saying that El Salvador's abortion ban is, quote, tantamount to torture and other forms of ill treatment. Abortion is a human right for girls and women.
Outside of the womb.
Yeah, and they went on to say that abortion is a, quote, witch hunt against poor women. No, it's a witch hunt against their children to have abortions, you know.
Yeah, it's a torture on their baby.
The banning abortion is a
Right.
witch hunt against poor women.
Amnesty International is such a joke now, though, because they've even come out in defense of legalizing prostitution, which really only legalizes the men, the pimps, and the Johns, right? It only makes it legal for them to keep exploiting women and harming them and abusing them. So, I mean, Amnesty International has gotten so completely backwards in their views that they're a joke.
I said I want to talk a little bit more about this situation with the Supreme Court. There's a couple of things I want to bring up here. First off, one of the reasons that the Supreme Court, we always get these people on there, let's say John Roberts, for example, that turns around and betrays the conservative movement. And the reason for that is because the so-called conservative presidents that appoint these people always take this position that we're not going to ask them their position on particular issues because that's improper. We want to look and see what kind of temperament they have and so forth. So they don't ask them, you know, how would you rule on abortion? Whereas the godless left always does that, 100% of the time. So if you were to ask Hillary Clinton today, would you appoint someone to the Supreme Court that is opposed to Roe versus Wade? She'd say absolutely not. No, there's no way I would support someone to the Supreme Court who is opposed to Roe versus Wade. And, you know, it's the, well, elections have consequences, and people know what my position is on abortion when I run. So if, you know, they then expect me to live up to that when I appoint people to the Supreme Court. But so-called conservative presidents never do that. Why doesn't a presidential candidate come out and say, wait a minute, the American people elected me knowing that I was staunchly pro-life and that I said Roe versus Wade was a travesty and poorly decided. Why would I now then not act on that when it comes time for me to appoint someone to the Supreme Court? Why don't they ever do that? But they never do, and so we wind up with people on the court who stab us in the back once they're there, and we've been down this trail many times.
Is it because of the stigma that goes along with declaring yourself publicly pro-life? Like, I mean, could
Not
that
anymore.
be that they know? Well, I think that's the problem. And I was talking to a group about this recently. I gave a speech where I was talking about, you know, if you walk up to the average Joe and say, what is Planned Parenthood? Tell me what Planned Parenthood is. The average person would say, well, they're health insurance for low-income women. They help
Right.
poor women with health insurance, which is mind-blowing. This is the largest abortion provider in the country, but that's what the average person would say because their marketing is that good that they've convinced them. Likewise, you walk up to the average Joe and you say, so let's play word association. What do you think of when you think of the pro-life movement? And they say, oh, like clinic bombings and shooting doctors and all these horrible things, which we know is that's like a couple crazy people. A majority of the movement is about resources and helping women. But we have a major PR problem on our hands to the point where it's very difficult for us to change the culture because I think a lot of people are privately and secretly pro-life. But because of the negative connotations that go along with the word pro-life for some reason, they are not willing to publicly come out and say that.
I don't buy into that. I don't give that as an excuse for people, for a so-called conservative Republican pro-life presidential candidate or president to say, I am not going to ask this person how they would rule on abortion. I'm not going to ask them. I think that's
So why do you think that they don't ask them?
because they're not culturally pro-life themselves. They are politically pro-life. They're not culturally, and they're not committed to the cause.
So you don't think George W. Bush was?
No, absolutely not. I mean, right here in Texas, he named a highway after an abortionist that killed a 15-year-old girl, the John B. Coleman Highway down in Houston. No person who was in their heart pro-life would have done that. Nobody. So no, I don't think that they are. I think that they are politically pro-life. They know that in the Republican Party, you got to be pro-life or you're not going to get out of the primary. So that's what they have to do. But they're not culturally pro-life. They're not. It's not a core value with them. And I want to point out something to you. Let's just use somebody like Sean Hannity, for example. I saw him the other night talking about what's important in this political season. Now, he always claims to be so staunchly pro-life and a good Catholic boy and all this other stuff. He goes down a list of about 10 to 15 things that need to happen to get our country back on track. The unborn child's never mentioned, not mentioned once. Now, if you truly believe that abortion is murder, we're involved in the largest Holocaust in the history of the world, right here in the United States every day. If you believe that abortion is murder, in your heart you believe that. So how would you sit here and make this big, long list of things that have got to be solved and never touch the abortion issue? You're touching everything else. And some of these things that I heard him talk about, I thought were fairly obscure things that most people don't care about, but never mention the unborn child. And that's what I'm saying is you could have had, let's say George Bush, for example. You could have put George Bush on that same panel and said, okay, Mr. Bush, what do you think are the things that we need to address in this election to move this country forward and get us back on track as a Christian nation that we were originally created as? I think he could sit there for 2 hours and talk and never mention abortion. And that's not something that somebody who feels abortion in their heart, we wouldn't sit there and do that. It'd be the first thing we would bring up, right? Any true pro-lifer would. Said, look, God's not going to judge this nation over our immigration policy or our tax policy or our health care policies or regressive taxation or whatever. He's not going to judge us over that. But if we think we can avoid judgment for killing 3,000 of his babies every day, we are whistling past the graveyard. We have lost our minds if we don't think that that's a problem. But I want to raise a red flag for a minute in the time that we have left. What's happening on the national scene right now in the Republican primary and in the general and subsequently in the general election is something that the absolute 100% parallel to it happened here in Texas several years ago. And I want to raise a warning here. Several years ago in the Republican primary for governor of Texas, you had a bunch of guys running that were all pretty firmly pro-life. They were claiming they were anyway. And you had what I would say is just a complete buffoon from out in West Texas named Clayton Williams. And when he got into the race, nobody had ever heard of him. Even in Texas, we hadn't heard of him. Now, he'd made billions of dollars in a company called Claydesta Communications. He'd gotten in on the ground floor of cable television and wireless communication, and he'd made a fortune. But he was a buffoon. I mean, he was a joke. Actually, you see him on television, you listen to him, and I've been in a room with him before and visited with him back in those days, and you think, this is unbelievable that this guy is running for governor of Texas. When he got into the race, the obvious guy that the people of Texas wanted was a guy named Ken Hance, and Ken Hance was really strongly pro-life. He was a former congressman from Texas, and he wanted to come back and serve as governor of Texas. And he was a Sunday school teacher in his Baptist church, really a good guy, and he was the heir apparent. He was the guy that everybody said, okay, he'll be governor if he decides he wants to be. At that time, Clayton Williams had in the early polling, less than 1% of the vote. Nobody even knew who he was. He just this buffoon from West Texas come out of nowhere. But Clayton Williams had tons of money. And he started hiring the right consultants. And he hired a consultant out of Virginia whose specialty was helping Republican candidates secure the evangelical vote. And he comes in, and I knew people that were working with Clayton Williams. I thought he was a good guy. And he comes in to Clayton Williams' campaign and says, now, if you'll go out and do these things, just say these key words. And I remember one of them, this guy here in Denton told me that he was in on the meeting where this consultant said, look, don't go out and tell everybody that you read the Bible every day. Don't say
Just quote 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians. No, he said, no. He said, go out and tell them that you're in the Word. because that's
Oh,
code.
yeah. It
They'll think, oh, you're more than just reading your Bible. You're in the Word every day, right? And so Clayton Williams come out and would tell people, oh, I walk around my ranch every morning and I'm in the Word. I walk around the ranch in the Word. And he had all these little catchphrases. And you think, surely Christians aren't going to be simple-minded enough to buy this. Guess what they did?
They bought it.
They bought it. And you were here, you remember it, and Clayton Williams ran. And all of a sudden he starts gaining in the polls. And you figure out, well, Texas is a very conservative, very Christian, overwhelmingly pro-life state. So he starts talking about all these things. He had originally been pro-abortion before. Now all of a sudden he's this champion of the pro-life cause. And he's going to take it all the way, right, all the way to the governor's mansion, and we're going to do something about this. And he's doing all these, I'm in the Word every day, and talks about the problems with his son and how his son had drug problems or whatever it was, and how he got him in the Word and the Lord saved him and we spoke to Jesus, and people are sucking this up. And he ended up winning the primary and became the Republican candidate for governor of Texas. The problem was...
when we got Ann Richards.
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem
I
was...
wondered how we fouled that up. I wondered how that happened.
The problem was that between the end of the primary and the beginning of the general election, and throughout the general election campaign, everybody started to see what Clayton Williams was. He made all these just outrageous, stupid statements. I mean, just some of the most amazing things you can ever imagine. Talking about all the women he went to bed with when he was at A&M and how much fun he had, and doing all these kind of things. And then, of course, the thing that made national headlines, he was the lead story on the national news, when he was asked about his position on abortion for women who've been raped. And his response was, well, you know, I've always heard that if rape's inevitable, just lay back and enjoy it. And he plummeted in the polls.
Thank goodness.
And the evangelicals then decided, well, we supported the wrong horse in the primary, and they didn't vote for him. So they supported this guy en masse in the primary. Then in the general election, they figured out what he really was, and they said, no, we're staying home. And the result was the most embarrassing 4 years in Texas history. Ann Richards was governor of Texas.
Who is the mother of Cecile Richards, the head
Who's
of
now,
Planned Parenthood.
and you'd have never heard
Yeah.
Cecile Richards' name if it hadn't been for Ann Richards. So that's how these things, it's like a pebble you drop in
Yeah,
the water, and it, you know, the ripples.
Ripple effect.
The ripple effect from that. We're still paying for that.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to tell you right now, and like I said, I had friends right here in Denton that were supporting Clayton Williams, and we used to really go at it hammer and tong over this deal. And I said, this guy is not who you think he is. You know, you're backing the wrong horse here. And then later on, they figured it out. I can introduce you to a guy who will tell you right now, yeah, I should have listened. And and he was the head of the Clayton Williams campaign here in Denton County. They were naive enough to be sucked in by this guy. And then once they found out who he really was, they stayed home, and we wound up with Ann Richards. And it was humiliating for Texas that we had this woman as governor. And like I said, the ripple effect is we wound up with Cecile Richards. And I am afraid that that's what we're seeing happen today. We're not going to mention names because I don't want to offend anybody. But if you're out here supporting somebody right now because you're pro-life and you're pro-family and you're a good conservative Christian and you want to see this country return to constitutional principles, you better make certain that the person you're supporting in the primary is somebody that you know you can support in the general election. I was angry back in those days when Ann Richards won. And I wasn't angry at Ann Richards. You can't blame a snake for being a snake. Everybody knew what she was. She's a hardcore leftist, godless Marxist.
Character counts, and I think that's where it's like people have gotten so mad at the government that they're ready just to see someone in office who will burn it to the ground. They don't even care.
Look at what this person is.
It needs to be about character, the character of the person, and knowing whether you're liked.
And that's
I
what I'm
think
saying.
That's the problem too many Christians have, where we're virtuous and trusting and kind, but unfortunately that means sometimes we can be incredibly gullible. Where someone comes out and says, "I'm in the Word," or my favorite verse is 2 Corinthians, and suddenly we believe, oh, okay, I guess they read the Bible, I guess they're a Christian because they say so, rather than actually, praying for discernment and saying, what is the character of this person? What are their actions?
Scripture
What are
tells
the
us
fruits
you'll
of
know
the
them by
Spirit?
their works.
Yep.
You'll know them by their deeds.
Yep.
And that's what I'm saying. We've got to go back and look at these people in the cold light of day, not what we wish they were or think they should be, but what are they really? And is this person the person that we think that they are? And, you know, it's kind of like if, well, your children are getting older now, and it won't be too many more years before they'll start bringing home people that you think, well, they may marry this person, your daughter will bring home somebody, or one of your sons will bring home somebody. You're going to be looking at that person real hard, all right? Maybe harder than they are, because they're all caught up in the
love.
in the love and the but you can look at it a little more realistically and say, is this somebody that once the honeymoon is over, can you live with this person? Do you want to live with this person for the rest of your life?
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. And right now we're looking at, we talked earlier about the Supreme Court situation. If the Republicans hold on and say we're not going to confirm anybody, that means the next president is going to get to a point right off the bat, one, and you've got some people on that court that are 75 and 80 and 85 years old. This next president could easily appoint 4 or 5 Supreme Court justices. What if we back the wrong candidate now, and then find out during the general election that we backed the wrong candidate after the honeymoon is over, right?
Right.
We've backed the wrong candidate, and so we just back away.
Yeah, this goes beyond 8 years. This
trouble.
could be the next 40 years. It
Oh, this could be
impact our country.
permanent. They could put things in place that we'll never undo.
Right.
Never undo. So that's why it's so crucial of us right now not to get beguiled. And yes, it is true. The pro-life movement, the Christian community, tends to be very, very gullible and easily won over. And, you know, you've heard me say it here many times, particularly about the pro-life community. We're the cheapest state in town. You don't have to give us anything. Just say the right things to whisper in our ear. Tell us what we want to hear every 4 years, and we're yours, you know. And this time the stakes are too high. We can't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, good show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're out of time. And remember, until next time, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops.